hosting the Kent Tennis Day. They'll be hosting the Kent Tennis Day in September. Volunteer of the Year was our very own John Ratcliffe. Well done, John. Charlie Clements got the Rising Star at Canterbury. Development coach Sophia Thomas, she's on the call today, doing great things at Martin Dean and Bexley Heath. Performance coach Tom Martin Jarvis and Max Robinson, well done you two. Competitions was our very own Kent County Championships. Official of the year was Graham Sylvester. School Mundella in Folkestone. Tennis for All, Sundridge Park Padel, an inclusive programme, very inspiring on the evening. Connecting Communities was Whitstable Lawn Tennis Club. Again, doing great things in their local community. Well done, Whitstable. The Parks was Mark Wood, including the free park tennis that they're doing down there. So well done, Mark Wood Tennis Hub. Lifetime Achievement went to Stephen Woodley of Canterbury. Well done, Stephen. And finally, the new Kent President's Award went to Alexander MacLeod School in Abbey Wood. So well done and congratulations to all the award winners. Fantastic. Just want to move on now to our guest. Today we have Lee West, LTA approved lighting and planning specialist from Sports Facilities Planning and Design. I got to know Lee some 4 years ago, where he helped Mepham Tennis Club install our lighting and our clay courts. Before that, it was 20 years in the making trying to get lighting at our club. We never thought it was going to happen. We're in an area of special landscape and no street lighting in our village whatsoever. Started to engage with Lee, and we managed to get the lightings installed some 3 years ago. It's absolutely transformed our club. So, you know, Lee's done superbly well for us and hopefully can do well for you Kent clubs there as well. So, you know, welcome, Lee, and thanks for joining us today.
Morning. Yes, I'm probably going to divide my time up into 3 different areas. So we could, and the way these things work, I've done one before, two sessions before for another group, floodlighting group. If I just do a brief introduction and tell you where things are sort of heading in terms of LED lighting, maybe paddle courts, maybe court surfaces, give a brief introduction, tell you what things are, and then basically I'll just field questions from anybody who's got any specific questions on any particular subject, and the fielding of the questions usually brings to light anything that you may have as a group or may be particularly interested in at your own particular club. So I've been a consultant for the Lawn Tennis Association for about 30 years. I've been doing my own sort of lighting designs for the last 20 years, and I get to do a lot of very difficult jobs warehoused in close proximity. I also do quite a lot of jobs for local authorities in parks. So that background of doing the most difficult projects, not necessarily in the sort of south of the country, but also all over in the north as well, you get to know the guidance and the things you need to do to come up with a well-designed scheme. So we are approaching a period of change, really, in regard to lighting, where ecology is going to be given a lot more significance than it has been before. So we're going to have to do things differently, probably going forward. We're probably going to have to change the way that we light areas, where we position our columns, the fittings we use, the performance standards. So if you're a club that's in an urban area, you might not notice the change that much. But if you're in a more rural area, or if you've got surrounding trees and vegetation that provide habitat for bats, you're going to be under the microscope a lot more than what you've done in the past. So we need to think about how things are going to change. You might have to do not only the lighting design, but you might have to consider secondary things like screening. So essentially, last year, the Institute of Light Professionals have a guidance note for lighting and bats, and that guidance note has been produced in conjunction with Bat Conservation Trust, and it basically means there's a lot more sensitivity towards the impact of lighting on bats, not only in terms of their roost where they hibernate, but also in terms of where they commute and where they forage for food. So if we had hedges and screening vegetation for previous designs, that was quite good because we could use that to control spillage. But now guidance is saying that we have to be very careful about putting light onto areas where bats are going to feed. So we're looking at maybe trying to control the lit area within the tennis court block, not having so much spillage. We might have to have periods of time when we don't use the lighting, when bats are out operating, foraging and commuting. So it's going to be a big change, and we're going to have to look at things differently. And a lot of schemes that I've done in parks recently have been designed to the proper standards, and they've gone under that sort of early scrutiny. A lot of them have got through. However, there are some jobs that I've got at clubs where things have had to change, designs have had to change, we've had to move columns, we've had to introduce screening. So all that knowledge has really been sort of built up, and it's going to be applied going forward. So some of you that have done schemes in the past, what you've done in the past is not necessarily going to work in the future. So legislation changed in research in terms of biodiversity net gain. So some schemes, larger schemes, are going to have to undertake an assessment to assess the impact of the development, and this applies to all developments, whether it's lighting, courts, padel, or anything on the locality. And you've got to have a 10% improvement in biodiversity. So you might have to undertake your assessment. You might have to do some additional planting, or you might have to do something else. If you've got a limited site, you might have to think about paying for habitat to be created elsewhere. So really, the sort of ecology and sensitivity towards biodiversity is really sort of upon us, and things are going to have to change, really, I think, in terms of what we do. We might have to have lesser performance in some areas. We might have to have high levels of screening. We also might have to ask for superior fittings from manufacturers. Superior fittings in terms of additional sort of deflectoring around the outside, or internal louvers, or having fittings with superior levels of control that have not really been thought about before. And I've started to engage with certain manufacturers to sort of say, can you deliver me a superior light that's able to control the spill a lot better and be able to be more focused within a certain area. So that may take a bit of time for those fittings to come online, and for the photometrics to be around for people to use them in designs. But we're probably looking at 6 months probably before superior products are available, in addition to the ones we've got already.
Okay, so what you're saying really is things like ecological reports will be
so basically
now.
So basically, if you've got a lot of vegetation, trees in your site, you'd normally undertake a bat survey. A bat survey might be either a habitat one, or a transact, or recording the activities of bats when they're actually flying around the site. So historically, we've lots of schemes have maybe gone through without having to do bat surveys, but nearly every job I've had over the last 2 years, bat surveys have been, a minimum requirement, and more often than not, transact surveys or emergent surveys are required. And the problem with having a transact or emergent survey is that it can only be carried out during the periods of when bats are operating, which is essentially between May to the end of September. So you might have to be strategic and plan ahead to think, if you're doing a facility development of lighting, you might have to think that actually we can't really get all the key information together in terms of the reporting and assessments until certain times of the year. So
I managed to find a lady called, well, she was, the company's called Kent Botany, and she's based in Bethersden. So, and she did the preliminary ecological appraisal for our club. So I can share that at a later date with you all.
Yeah, so bat surveys and ecological surveys you're gonna have to do. Find that you're gonna have to do. You can't really avoid them going forward. Bat surveys essential for lighting, but generally ecological surveys for any facility development now are probably going to be a minimum requirement, and you're going to have to engage with someone, a consultant, to carry out that type of assessment survey for your project. So, like I say, historically we might have got away with not being able to do bat surveys, but now bat surveys, ecology surveys, I probably would say I wouldn't want to submit an application for flood lighting for new courts unless one was done. So we're like I say, we're entering interesting times with this biodiversity net matrix as well calculation. So, you know, we've got to think that we're going to have to spend a little bit more money in terms of developing schemes than we have done in the past, because when you make an application, you submit your drawings, your lighting design, other information. The local authorities will be looking for ecological assessments and bat surveys as part of the submission information. And if they're not provided, they won't validate your application, so it'll be returned. So you need to make sure that you know the appropriate level of information that you need to get your applications validated.
Mm-hmm.
So really, it's a case of saying, no, the LTA standards of 400 lux on the principal playing area and 300 lux on the total playing area. So principal playing area is the area bounded by the court markings, and the total playing area is the area 4.5 meters to the run back and 2.5 meters to the sides. So, you know, those areas in terms of PPA, we're probably still going to concentrate on that, but in some instances, the TPA, we might not necessarily be able to deliver the LTA performance. So because of ecological consideration. So a lot of times where we have difficult floodlighting schemes where there's where we're in close proximity to houses, there's another guidance note called the obtrusive light ILP guidance note for the reduction of obtrusive light. So that sets out key criteria for the amount of light falling onto the facades of houses, and also criteria in terms of source intensity, or a layman's term, glare calculations for the fittings. So
I mean that people might have to lower their expectations. So
they may have to be. So generally, if you've got a scheme where there's houses in close proximity, you might have to reduce the output of your fittings, or you might have to reduce the performance if you cannot comply with the guidance for the effect on houses. So what we're saying is that really, if your ecological considerations are overwhelming, then you may have to reduce the performance of your scheme. So for the ILP reduction of obtrusive light, there are key criteria for. So one of them is like the amount of light falling on house facades. So for like a suburban area, which quite a lot of clubs might be in, you can have 10 lux falling on facades of buildings. So that sets a level which you can't exceed. So you need to work with that. Sometimes the performance is reduced as a consequence. And if you're getting funding from the LTA, they would be aware of that. So similarly, I think that the ecology issues are going to be as equally as important as maybe the effect on housing. So what we've done for reducing the effect on housing is probably going to be applied in the same way to ecology. So we're not going to be able to have, you know, large output fittings with very massive areas of spill around the courts. We're going to have to design things a lot more sensitively. So we might have to have, you know, a higher number of low wattage fittings directed and controlled in a certain way. We might have to have screening, but it's certainly some of the things that we do for reducing the impact of lighting on housing is certainly going to have to be applied if you've got a lot of quality habitat for bats and ecology around your courts. So it's very difficult to try and design schemes where there isn't any spillage beyond the actual tennis court block itself. You know, spillage usually goes a significant way, 20 or 30 meters or maybe even more. So the guidance note on bats last year, we used to have to indicate an outer contour of half lux. That's been reduced or increased to show an outer contour of 0.2 lux. So that's really sort of like, I suppose you could say moonlight would be the equivalent sort of level of light of 0.2 or 0.1 lux. So a lot more scrutiny is being looked at lighting schemes. And again, we're probably looking at having probably warmer, yellowy color temperature schemes. Lots of people at tennis clubs tend to have 4,000 or 5,700 Kelvin, which is the more blue or white. We probably ecology and the guidance notes are pushing people down the route of having more warmer white schemes, which are 3,000 Kelvin. So again, the problem with that is that's fine for ecology, but it pushes up power consumption. So the move over to LED, has meant that we can do things that we haven't done in the past. So historically, we've generally had two types of floodlight fitting. We had the 1 kilowatt and 2 kilowatt metal halide projectors, and they were generally the same from all the manufacturers. And then we had the box fittings. But with LED, we've got a multiplicity of different types of fittings, different shape, size of aesthetic, different.
Will people be able to use their same columns, Lee? And will they have to apply for planning again if they're going from metal halide?
If you're moving a column or you're replacing a column, you have to apply for planning consent. So you may be able to come up with schemes for new schemes. Certainly, columns will be slightly differently positioned to what they have done in the past. If have got existing schemes and you're changing the heads, then you have to consult with the planners to see if they will consider putting LED fittings on your existing columns to be something that they would consider you don't need planning consent for, or you may have to go back. So if you are changing things significantly from what you had before in terms of aesthetics and performance, or if you've got a particularly sensitive site in terms of surrounding houses, then I would always recommend that you would make a planning application to get your new scheme through the planners, because no one wants to spend a lot of money doing a scheme and then find out that it doesn't comply or the planner's not happy with it.
And what about the weight of the LED lights? Because they've got a sort of a big transformer on top of them. Would existing columns?
Yeah, the weight of the fittings. I mean, everybody, if you're reusing your columns, then if they're over a certain age, maybe over 15 years, you should get them tested to see if they're the structural integrity is still there. They can do an electromagnetic test, which involves putting a current through the column to see how much degradation there is below ground, because obviously you can't see how much it's rusted below ground, and then you can do a windage calculation for your new fittings on your existing columns. So not every job I would suggest would necessarily mean new columns, but certainly some jobs you might have to, depending on what local authority said about whether you have to apply for new planning or not, you might have to show that your new LED scheme meets all the current guidance.
Yeah, fine. I mean, do you want to take some questions at this point on lighting? Yeah. So hands up, be it electronically or physically, but Rob Sheath.
You said about this bat survey between May and September. Do you have to do the test for the whole of that period of time? Or?
No, they usually, when they do a bat survey, they usually visit over. They usually make 2 visits as a minimum to record, the bat. They put sonograms out and record the pips and squeaks of the bats, and I then identify the species. So normally you'd expect someone, they're doing a bat survey, to visit the site two times, maybe 3 times. What the legislation or what the change has meant is that if you've got a a very sensitive or priority habitat nearby, so like large areas of woodland or something like that, then the local authority ecologist may ask you to do, you know, a lot higher level of bats assessment than maybe is what done in the past. So they could ask you to record bats in the area for, you know, 2 or 3 months. So, you know, it really is a big change to know what's going to be required. But I mean, normally a bat survey with 2 or 3 visits would be adequate, unless you've got you know, priority habitat, which is like historic woodland, or if you've got particularly certain types of bats. So certain types of bats there are some that are more sensitive to light than others. I mean, if you've got areas of water, there are bats that are particularly found around water, like Dorptus bat, that are sensitive to light. So yeah, you need to.
Our bats fly around inside when the lights are on. They fly around inside.
Yes, they catch the insects. Yeah. So I mean, if you are changing your fittings from metal halide to LED, that is actually, you know, a good thing for ecology, because, you know, some insects are attracted by the UV light and metal halide, and they're so attracted that they can't escape, and they sort of end up just you know, expiring around the light. So change over to LED has got
yeah. So that's a better thing basically for.
Yeah. So that is sort of, so a lot of clubs, maybe if they're looking for additional floodlighting, may want to consider, you know, changing the heads on their existing LEDs, changing existing metal halide to LEDs to show an improvement there. I mean,
what we're looking to do is we're looking to put more floodlight-free courts, and maybe change metal halide into LED.
Yeah.
So this bat survey, if they're going to come 2 or 3 times, will that be over the whole period between May and September, or will that
No, it would be sort of 2 or 3 weeks apart. So they would come maybe sometime in May. They do 1 visit, and then they'd come 2 or 3 weeks later.
Oh, okay.
Normally, Rob, if you contact one of these ecological specialists, they know exactly what dates they need to visit you. Really, they sort of take it from there. But I say I will share Ken Botany's number with you all at the end, to say she's only based in Betherston.
And like I say, yeah, you know, bat lighting and bats sort of have gone hand in hand, but there's also this biodiversity net gain metric as well, where a lot of people are still feeling their way. So, you know, if you're getting someone to do a bat survey, you might ask them to look at ecology more widely at the site, you know, to think about the impacts. And I don't know your club, or what is your club? Is it
Wickham Park Tennis Club near Park Langley?
Right. So, I mean, if you've got lots of trees or surrounds that have got important ecological habitat for bats or whatever, then you're probably well advised to. So what happens, because you've got a very short period of when you make your application. Say you submit an application for floodlighting without your bat survey or ecology survey being undertaken, it usually takes 7 to 14 days for it to be validated. Usually decision period is like 8 to 10 weeks. Most local authorities still haven't caught up from COVID, so they're all running behind. So you might not hit. The project might get validated, and then you might find out 5 or 6 weeks later that the planning officer comes back to you and said, "Oh, can we have a bat survey?" And it might be that you're outside of that window of opportunity to do it because time's moved on. So, you know, you need to think a lot more strategically about your sort of when and how you're going to submit the.
Yeah, because I want to put these. I'd like to get the lights up this year.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to get onto it now. And if we're getting a grant from the LTA for it, will you be there helping us with all this?
No, not necessarily. I'm an external consultant. If there's a particular, you can apply for loans or grant money from to the LTA. They will fund it in accordance to their own terms and conditions. They will probably look to see that you've got planning consent. If you want help in terms of planning or anything like that, then that's not something the LTA get get involved with now, that would have to be a direct commission between me and the club. So if you do want ES support or assistance, then you can contact me, and Kent LTA will provide my contact details, number, my website. You can search for sports facility and you can find me. So if you do want a visit to get some advice or some guidance as to how you should progress, then I'm too happy to assist. Do lots of different projects for lots of different people. So like I say, this wouldn't be the first time that I'd be helping someone with their floodlighting.
Any other questions for Lee at all? Is anybody switching from metal halide at the moment to LED?
Hi Andy, it's Damien. Yeah, I've got a question.
Hi Damien.
Hi Andy, thank you. And hi Lee, nice to see you again. Just a quick plug for Lee. We used him on surfacing our courts, and he was very helpful, just in technically supporting that. But more importantly, when things started to go wrong, it was worth his weight in gold. And actually got the manufacturers.
What club are you from?
Gravesham.
Oh,
with,
yeah.
Yeah, we had to get the court dug up a bit, so it was very helpful. So thanks Lee. Got a quick question then, just because we're looking to replace the metal halide on the top courts.
Yeah.
So we've got all of those questions with old posts, 40 years old, integrity, structural checks to do. The suppliers, I've had 2 suppliers out to have a look, and they said about the weight may be a problem, so that's an issue of concern. So as I've gone through the experience of getting vendors out to have a look, more and more questions come out, not least that the actual power supply is 180 meters run of cable to our lights, and so there may not be enough power to actually feed the top courts, and we've got some bottom courts on a generator, so there's quite a few variables going on there. But my question to you really was, what's the sequence of events in terms of going to the planning permission? Do you go to them and ask what we need, so then you can go and give the vendors, you're going to need to design lights that will have this bat issue, this spillage issue, or do you go and get them to do their design and then take it to the planning?
Well, I think yeah, I mean, a lot of times I get asked to assist people is when they've gone down a route, and that route hasn't been the most successful for planning. So I think your club, your existing courts are lit with 10-meter columns and 2 kilowatt metal halide. So your existing courts would be ideal for to change over to LED, and you'd free up enough power to probably run the upper court block by going over to LED. So I think they're lit by 2, 4. So each court's got 4 2 kilowatt metal halide fittings. So that's 8 kilowatts, and probably using 10% more power to run. So it's probably 8.8 kilowatts a court. Yeah. If you were going for LED, you could probably reduce the number of fittings. So with LED design, the concept of shared fittings between courts can be applied. So you've got 4 courts on one, 4 fittings on one court in a block. So if you were lighting a block, you could reduce, a column that's got 2 heads on, you could probably reduce that to just 1. So it would remain on whether one court was being used or the adjacent. So it's quite a lot of potential to reduce power by changing over to LED on the existing, and that would free up power for your new court. Really, probably the first thing I would do is go to the planners and ask them the question about the change over to LED. I do know you've got some houses, haven't you, up the
just at one corner, yeah, but we haven't got lights on those courts number 1 and 2. So although that may be something we'll look at.
Yeah. So there's really I'd check for planning first, and then I would make a strategic decision about. There certainly would be by changing the lights over to 2 courts, you would certainly free up enough power to do that another 2. So maybe you look at the project as an entirety, with a conversion to LED on your metal halide and putting a new scheme in on your upper court block. Now, if I remember the upper court block, that's got some greenery around it, hasn't it, on 2 sides?
Yeah, it's got the trees on one side, yeah.
Yeah, so again, we'd be looking for not necessarily maybe, following the same design route that you've got on your existing courts. Generally, you get a bigger spill footprint when you're using fittings that are on columns in the corners of the run backs. maybe you want to go for a multi-column configuration, which will allow you to have lower columns, lower wattage fittings, and also I think you might have some houses up that side as well, haven't you?
No,
they're quite a way, aren't they?
50 meters away. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think maybe you'd be looking at doing a slightly different scheme on your new courts to what you've got on your existing.
Damien, did you have another question?
Sorry, it was just, without going to specifically our courts, it's just about reutilising the post is critical, because I think it's, it's £500 for a new column and probably 500 at least to actually have it dug in and cemented in. So you're adding £1,000 a column, aren't you, or something like that?
A test would be in the order of about anywhere between £800 to £1,000 for a site. Windage calculations are on top of that, but yeah, I mean, if you've got heavy duty 10-meter columns that are probably 15 years old, is that right?
Time flies. They're probably more like 40 now, unfortunately. So,
oh right, well, if they're 40.
40. There was on the top courts I put in 82, and in the the generated ones were newer posts. They're okay. They're put in year 2000. So we got a mix. So
I would say that you'll probably be well advised to carry out a non-destructive electromagnetic test on your columns.
Yes.
As a first thing, I think your columns at the upper court block are very antiquated and I'm pretty rusted as well, aren't they? I think
they were. Yeah.
I don't want to be insulting to you, but I think your lighting there is probably.
No, I go and give them a stress test every so often.
Yeah. I would say I'd get your testing of your columns done, and I'd maybe approach the planners and ask them for their thoughts on what they would expect.
Yeah, and I think they're the ones where. But I'm just saying to everyone, once you actually enter into this, it's a bit of a journey. There's lots of things about the power, the columns, the integrity of the bats, the ecological. The other thing is about the question of, that they were saying about, well, how much light do you actually need? If you're just hitting or training or coaching, you don't need LTA competition standards at 500 lumens, so therefore you don't need such powerful light fittings. Right. Therefore, that won't be so expensive. Therefore, your cost savings, return investment is more important.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
those sort of decisions as well.
Yeah. So if you if we take your club as an example, so your existing floodlighting is 10-meter, 2 kilowatt metal halide. So when that's operating, you're achieving the LTA recommended standard of 500 and 400. But with metal halide, you had a maintenance factor of 20%. So you're having a significant overperformance with metal halide. So so the LTA standards are applied individually on a court-by-court basis. So each court has to demonstrate it meets that performance criteria. So when you're having 2 courts on, you're going to get a big overperformance. So with LED, I mean, you would have, possibly I would design to say the LTA minimum standard, and then when you have more courts on, you've got an overperformance. But we're probably entering a period now when, so like a lot of indoor schemes on indoor tennis centres, they have quite a lot of design features that allow dimming of lights, that allow for daylight harvesting. So again, you can set when 2 courts are operating, you can have control features that allow a performance level to be set, and you can dim the fittings. And you would pay maybe more for control, a high functioning control system, but you would gain, a payback in terms of power consumption. So it's a multiplicity of things to consider, and in terms of whether you want the courts just on and off, or if you want to have separate performance standards, because you can dim with metal halide, you were never able to dim with LED. You can dim, so you can have 2 or 3 different levels of performance if you want. And if you want to pay more for the management system, you can do that.
Yes. So that was my last thing. When I got the quotes, just out of interest, everyone, the actual switching on and off the lights is kind of a separate quote. I haven't included because they've just assumed we're going to switch the lights on the same way as we do today. So some have got slots and tokens. Some have just got an on-off. They're all on or off. So just be careful when you get quotes to make sure that you consider the
I mean,
switching?
we're probably entering the period when you're going to be able to have a lot more wireless control. So you're going to be able to maybe control the lights from your phone, or you're going to be able to pick different standards from your phone. So wireless control. So again, you might want to think about the legacy of your fitting. Is it something that's got dial enabled controls? Does it have to be control wide? Does it have wireless control? And I know one of the manufacturers that has got a wireless control session coming up with contractors and designers. So I think this is something that's going to really sort of take off.
I think the LTA are very keen on clubs looking at pay and play, and that's all good and well if you've got a manager on site. But if you haven't, then you're looking at maybe a smart gate of some description, which we've got at Mepham, and that's really opened up pay and play to us. And that obviously is controlled via the lights as well. So through Club Spark, you book your court and your lights come on automatically. So that's really worked well for us. Has anybody else got a Club Spark gate on the call that's been working well for them? No, I can definitely recommend it. As I say, from a security point of view, it's great. And I said, you haven't got that worry of tokens at all, or a monetary exchange. Stripe will take the payment for you on Club Spark, and then 15 minutes beforehand, the lights automatically come on and go off after the booking as well. So it works out really well. You can do group bookings, like social bookings and things like that. So you can do like bookings throughout the year where there's no sort of payment made if there's a social event or something. But I want to move away from lighting now, if we can, Lee, and talk briefly on sort of tennis court design and paddle court, which is on the top of everybody's tongue at the moment.
Yeah. So basically, leading on a little bit. So I've done lots of paddle court schemes, light designs, new build schemes for paddle. So in terms of lighting for paddle courts, the nature of the way that you procure paddle is that you're buying essentially a kit, which includes the glass, the weld mesh, the posts, the integrated columns, and also the lights. Now, a lot of these lights that you get are low wattage, 150, 200, 300 watt fittings from continental Europe or from the Far East that don't really comply with the criteria that's set in for the ILP guidance note in terms of glare. So you have to be very careful about thinking about your lighting with paddle. You don't really want LED lights that are tilted up at significant angles, like 70, 80 degrees. You really want, higher quality light fittings that have got lower tilt angles and that are able to control glare. So done a lot of work on that. I've got again, worked with some manufacturers, got some really good products coming online that have been development for the last 2 years. So
is it just the lighting that's causing the problems, Lee, out there?
No, there's a lot of I mean, paddle.
I
mean, the paddle court, paddle courts generally. There's a large amount of investment going into paddle courts, and all that money is basically a lot of it's commercially driven now. So you've got a lot of people, a lot of hedge fund money and investors from the city that are going to look that are putting money into paddle because they can see it makes a return which is higher than necessarily what they would have got from just keeping it in the bank. So you've got a lot of people coming into paddle now and who are going to look at developing large schemes. A lot of leisure centres are also thinking about paddle. So I think historically paddle, a lot of it, the schemes have been maybe not as well designed in terms of space planning, ramming courts in too close together, not thinking about out-court play, not necessarily, giving too much consideration to noise and the effect on neighbours. I mean, generally now, lots of local authority planning officers and environmental health people know about the impact of noise from paddle. So you would, if you're doing a paddle project, you'd have to consider impact on your neighbours in terms of noise as well as the light. So, you know, if you're within a certain distance of a house, you know, you're going to have to do a noise survey. Those surveys aren't cheap. You spend, you know, £1,500 to £2,000 getting a noise assessment done to support your application. You might have to think about, you know, sound reflective fences, sound absorbent fences, where they're positioned, how they're orientated. Again, think about the position of the paddle courts and the way that the noise comes out from the paddle court, because a lot more noise comes out from the side than it does at the backs. So I think generally there's been a lot of development up to date as not necessary. So there are some very good schemes, but a lot of schemes haven't necessarily been designed as well as they should have done. Certainly in terms of foundation design, some may have woeful foundations compared to what they should have. Also, I see quite a lot of schemes where there's a lot of rusting of components. So whenever I visit a site where it's got new paddle, I'm always looking to see if there's rusting of metalwork or mesh.
I presume it'd be easier to convert a existing tennis court to a paddle court rather than finding that bit of land next to your club and trying to sort of shoot.
Yeah, I mean, paddle courts are built flat, so you can build following the gradient of the tennis court. The tennis courts are obviously built to a single plane or long or cross fall. Some older courts are built to work to a diagonal fall, so you can construct your ring beam so it follows the gradient of the tennis court. But it tends to look, the aesthetics of it aren't as good as if you build the court flat. So every job that I get involved in terms of paddle, I would rather, you know, that the paddle courts are built to a level gradient. So when you're doing that over a tennis court block, you might find that it's out of the ground slightly at one end or the other. So again, you know, having a survey, knowing your levels, knowing what you need to do to generate a decent playing surface and all the surrounds is always good. It means a lot of paddle development. There's a lot of people doing it, offering paddle, and you have to be very careful that you spend your money wisely and you think about good space planning, good design, because I think the competition for in facilities is going to get a lot. It's going to increase a lot more. So there's going to be a lot more well-designed, well-lit, space planned paddle courts coming on stream for other people. So if you're doing it at a club, you've got to think about the legacy of your development and thinking, you know, is this paddle court development going to be sustainable in 4 or 5 years' time if someone else develops something down the road, or if there's a development from paddle courts elsewhere that's got more space around, it's thought more about outcourt play, it's got superior lighting.
With more companies coming online and supplying, will that sort of drive down costs, do you think?
A paddle court to buy is generally anywhere between 25,000 to 30,000, depending on what you want. Groundworks can vary widely. Ring beams, depending on how much reinforcement of concrete you can pay, a little or a lot. I think, you know, people need to think about spending quite, you know, a decent amount, making sure the foundations are adequate, getting, and you know, an structural engineer to design your foundations for your particular location is always wise. So I think there's more people involved, and there's more people that are part of SAPCA now, and some of the traditional tennis court contractors are getting more involved in paddle. Tennis court contractors, not necessarily want to do a great deal of paddle work, because they find that the traditional tennis court work delivers at a high level of profit than paddle. Paddle's quite complicated in terms of labour and time. You know, you need a higher resource to manage the build with the concrete foundations and everything else with the paddle. It can be a lot more time consuming for management and staff as opposed to doing traditional tennis court work. But I mean, there are some good schemes and there are some good people and products out there, and you just need to spend a little time making sure that you don't rush and you do things, you know, well. But I mean, there are a lot of schemes that I see where rust, you know, after a short period of time is manifest. and you need to make sure you're buying a court that's been designed for an outdoor environment and suitably protected. I mean, when you go to the factories in Spain and you see the paddle courts being built, there's sort of two there's paddle courts for indoors and there's paddle courts for outdoors. And the ones for outdoors should have all a high level of corrosion protection. Again, some people, you need to make sure if you're buying anything secondhand, it's not an indoor court for an outdoor environment. Because if you do, there's one that I've seen that's some indoor courts have been put up outside and they're massively rusting.
Can we stop there, Lee? Is any questions regarding sort of paddle court projects that anybody's got on the go at the moment? Rob, you've got a question there with your hand up?
Oh, sorry, my question is about lighting, if you don't mind.
Yes. Okay.
First of all, we've got trees right next to the courts we're going to light. So would it be sensible to cut them down before we start planning or after?
Is this tennis court lighting or paddle court lighting?
Tennis court lighting, yeah. And paddle if we get to doing paddle as well. There.
Yeah, I mean, if I wouldn't want you to cut down trees unnecessarily, unless
they're conifer trees, and we're going to have to.
They would have a. If they're not essential and they're not providing any what they provide in screening or windbreak or something like that.
Yeah. Also dropping stuff all over the clay courts and bird.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to say cut your trees down without visiting the site and having a visual assessment of what the locality is.
Well, we're going to have to cut them down, but it's whether we do that before or after planning for lighting.
Depends whether their value for screening is superior to their value in terms of ecology or the nuisance they're creating. So I don't know how close are your trees to your tennis court.
Right next to them.
See, when you've got conifers directly adjacent or trees directly adjacent to tennis courts, that usually leads to a problem in terms of moisture withdrawal and root ingress. So not ideal. If you're going to plant anything, ideally it should be a good distance back, 3 to 5 meters back. So if they're right on the court boundary and there's a potential for them to cause problems for the court sub-base construction, then I'd probably say remove them. But I mean, there might be a higher value in terms of screening. I don't know if you've got any houses adjacent to your site or not.
Not that side, no. Well, they are.
But so I mean, it's up to you. But I would say careful. Consider it carefully. Maybe contact me afterwards and we have a look at Google Earth or something.
Yeah, I think contacting you afterwards is you might prefer I do that when I ask you how much you're going to charge us. So perhaps consultancy advice is going to be a fee, and a couple of £100 for me to come out and to talk about your facility development for your floodlight in your courts. But
it is a good investment, Rob, at the end of the day. To do it properly,
and the other question is tweener lighting for planning permission, making it easier to get planning permission.
Is that the LED strip lighting? Is it tweener?
Yeah. So tweener lighting is something that's been around for a few years, very popular in France. So the tweener system in France actually has uplighters, so it has 4 uplighters for lob balls. So putting light directly into the sky isn't in accordance with the ILP guidance note. It's not something that we're really permitted to do in the UK. So the tweener scheme is reduced as a consequence of not having a 4. So in the UK, I don't think they have the 4 uplighters as they do in continental Europe. In terms of strip lighting, yes, it's something that's there. I'm not sure if it complies with the source intensity calculations. There are various different design programs that you use for lighting. The one I use is able to carry out source intensity calculations. Some of the other ones, such as Dilux and Relux, not necessarily, and Calculux, not necessarily able to carry out the current performance calculations for source intensity.
Yeah.
I think that the tweener system, you'd have to look at it very carefully to see whether it was compliant.
Right, we've got a few more questions now, Rob, from other people. So I just let other people come in. So David, if you can come in.
Hi, David Roger from Broadstairs. We're vaguely looking at paddle. It's a long way away, I think, but what's the uplift in cost for having a roof? We've got a grass area which we could put open, well, paddle courts without a roof. But if we want to put a roof on them, what would the percentage uplift on the cost of the project be?
Cost, you can pay anything between 50 to 75, 80, 100. So the minimum cover would be around 50, 60,000. You can pay up to about 100. But a lot of the schemes now, I would budget for say 55, 60,000, because you can have a totally open sided canopy.
Is that with a roof? Is that with a roof?
This is with a roof, yeah. So per court, there's various different ways you can cover paddle court. So if you want to cover each individual court in a modular basis and span over between courts, that's probably going to derive you a very low cost of per court in terms of the building construction cost. In terms if you had 3 courts or 4 courts in a row and you have to span the length or the width, then the span, you're probably spanning 20 meters or you're spanning 40 meters. You're going to have a lot more expensive building. So your costs might be more like 100, or it might be significantly more like a traditional tennis court building cost, rather than if you just try and span the width of the paddle court, which is like, so the paddle court span is the width of the paddle court is 10 meters. So if you're going to put a canopy over, you probably want to have a canopy of at least, maybe 11 meters, and actually, because of the foundations and everything else and the way the structure of the canopy fits in, you might want something which is wider. So if you think that a canopy building, maybe you want something 12 or 11.5 meters wide, there's not a great deal of difference from making that even wider and making it sort of 14 meters to cover out court play. So yeah, I mean, most people, in order to derive maximum return for their investment in a paddle court, would want, a cover. Not necessarily everybody, but if you think the new build paddle court might be 75, 80,000, cover might add another 50, 60,000 or even more, depending on how you can configure it.
Great,
Right.
thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions for anybody else? No, fine. Lee, just if they want to get in contact with you, obviously we'll put your details out later.
Yeah,
but,
we seem to run out of time there.
Yeah, it's gone very quickly. But if they do want to engage with you, can you just let people know briefly the process in you coming out and what you do?
You can contact me you can ring my mobile 07770 366 259, or you can send me an email at office@sfpad.co.uk, or you can search my company's website, Sports Facility Plan Design, on the website, and you'll find my details, and you can contact me through there. If anybody wants a reference, obviously got Andy and Damien, was it, from Ravesham. Yeah, I mean, if you want to consult, it's not gonna be a free, but if you want to consult and have a project that's well designed and well thought out and it's got a legacy, that's to ensure that it's going to be around, especially in paddle, I think that you are really going to have to make sure your design is up to a legacy position, that otherwise you might find that you get swept aside by other sites with superior design going forward.
And when you engage with Lee, it's not just him coming down and doing the design. It's he then goes out to tender for you. So he will, go out to tender to say 3 different companies, lighting, court specialists, and then once it's been installed, Lee then comes back and has to basically ratify it all. You get your meter out and make sure the LED lights.
Yeah, no testing and all that sort of stuff, and lighting. I mean, paddle is a big growth area, and there's a lot of work being done currently on the canopies. I'm working with a few people for pilot schemes with the LTAs, and I've been involved with the paddle cover at Nottingham Tennis Centre for the LTA, which is a 3-court structure. I've done the lighting design there and did the spatial review. So there's a lot more knowledge about canopies now than there have been, and there's not more knowledge and understanding about the impact of putting canopies in following the construction of the paddle courts, the positions of the columns, the sizes of the base plates, the size of foundations, and how you would, in an ideal world, you'd maybe do it all at once. But if you want a legacy position of putting a canopy in, following you build your courts, and you can do it in a certain way to make sure you don't end up shooting yourself in the foot.
Right.
Just a quick question: is the LTA offering grants for paddle courts?
They are.
Oh, they
Yes.
are, okay.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Anna Wilson is doing our coffee morning next month, and it'd be purely on paddle.
Okay.
So join us next month, and I said it'd just be purely on paddle courts. She's part of Sundridge Park, so Anna's got away that Sundridge Park are doing their paddle, and then why Tennis Club, Graham Sutherland down there, they've got one paddle court now installed. He does it slightly different, but yeah, purely and simply paddle next month on our coffee morning. So join us for that one. So yeah, sorry, go on.
Can I ask a question from Tom Giles? With the LTA grants, is that a grant or a loan?
It's a loan.
A loan, okay.
It's a loan, yeah.
Thank you.
It's a loan. I think I remember reading somewhere it's up to 75% of the cost of a paddle court at the moment. But yeah, no, thanks very much, Lee. With all that, just an update on the walking tennis grant from last month. So 16 clubs have come forward to obtain a £200 grant for walking tennis. So we'll be in contact with those very shortly and getting their bank details and whatever. 2 clubs with open court. So again, if you've got an open court program that you're looking to start or engage with, then please contact Janice. We'd like to hear from you. Open court tends to be for a disability tennis. So if you're outreaching to certain communities and you can engage with the open court, then there's still £3,000 of Kent money to allocate to clubs out there. So back over to you, Janice, if that's okay.
Yeah, so all the information that's been covered today, I'll be sending you in a follow-up email. So you don't need to worry about not catching the phone number or any of the information. I'll put the links to the grants on the LTA, the loans to the LTA website in the email as well. So everything will be sent to you later today or Thursday morning. Just one person, Gary. I don't know what club you're from, Gary. Crescent. Okay, Gary, welcome to the meeting. So just so I can send the right information to you. Yes, I think we've covered good news stories today, unless anybody has got something they want to share with us before we leave.
I just wanted to ask something about this very quickly, about the park programme. Got any idea what's happening with that?
Parks in... Yeah, so there is lots of park programmes going on at the moment. I think Thanet and Swale have been earmarked as well. So yeah, there's Bexley. I think there's 33 courts and 8 sites in Bexley.
What I really asked about.
Oh, sorry, I lost you there, Gary.
Right, that's what I was really asking about the Bexley one. Yeah, they had a flyer come around the house.
Yes.
And I went down and spoke to them about it, and it seems quite a big project.
Yeah, they are. So 33 courts in Bexley is a big project.
Yeah,
I don't know whether at the moment whether they're going to be engaging clubs with the park sites or have sort of independent companies running it. I think in Bexley they're looking at a big national company to run the park sites. There is talk about having volunteers go along to the park sites. As I said, free park tennis seems to be happening at Mark Wood at the moment. So very similar to park runs. And as I say, I think they want that to be sort of volunteer led. But hopefully I'll have a bit more information on that in the next couple of months. But lots of investment from the LTA into park sites, definitely at the moment throughout Kent. Yes.
Yeah, because I asked at a previous meeting if I could be updated on it, because I wanted to know there's a couple of places right near our club.
Yes.
I know that they've already applied or got in touch with local coaches to run it. So it's almost like where the LTA is paying for a rival to be right next door to me, literally surrounding me, which is a bit annoying.
Yeah, as I said, I think they are trying to engage with local clubs as well, and maybe having a volunteer at the clubs go down on these free park tennis days would be a good idea as well.
They've gone straight to the coaches without telling anybody.
Right, got you.
The clubs have been left out, basically.
Yeah. Well, what I'll do is if you can give your information to Janice at the end, I'll try and find out a bit more information for you, Gary. If that's okay. Yeah.
I'll give you a call, Janice. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, no worries, Gary. Yeah.
Lovely.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. I'll say thanks for joining us again. Oh, Stephen Rye.
Yeah, hi. I just want to go back to Rob about his conifer tree issue. We had a similar issue at Whitstable. There were trees the other side of our fencing in a nursing home. They got so big, they were above the fencing, and birds were nesting and roosting, and detritus and whatever was coming down onto the tennis courts. So we went and spoke to the nursing home and basically come up with a deal where they cut the trees right down to the stumps. So just go ahead and do it. It's made a hell of a difference to both our tennis courts with more light and the nursing home, which has got more light. So, you know, you were saying, do I do before or after or when? Just do it.
Yeah, what I would say is, though, you can't, some trees are protected by tree preservation orders, so you need to check out.
Well, even if they're in a garden.
Yeah.
Trees,
trees are protected. Some trees have tree preservation orders, and you can't do anything to them unless you apply for planning consent. So, and if you cut trees down, the fines are significant. We're talking 10, 20,000.
Yeah.
Well, conifer trees aren't protected, are they?
No, I don't think so. Certain species of conifer or Monterey pine trees and stuff like that, specimen pine trees. So you have to be careful. That's what I'm saying. Don't assume that you can cut anything down unless you check out the status. But if it's just normal conifers that you planted yourself, then I wouldn't imagine there'd be a problem. But just play it safe. Yeah,
the company that actually did it had to apply for permission to do it, so I kept a check on the Canterbury Council site to see how it was going.
So they must have been TPO trees.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much, Stephen. Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
All right, so join us on the 19th of March, and I'll say the topic will be all things paddle. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.